All right, let's get our Facebook groups in here before it's time to go. I'm going to hit that Scott Kennedy Sports one there as well, Scott. So that way we getting all those eyeballs in there. There we go. Boom, boom, and boom. All right. Welcome in, welcome in. It is Tuesday morning, the 2nd, and it's time for an episode of Broncos for Breakfast. I am Nick Kendell and joined by, as always, over there on the right side of the screen, Scott Kennedy. Scott, how you doing? How was your New Year? Did anything fun? I'm an old person at this point. I don't do anything.
Yeah, it didn't look a hell of a lot different than a regular weekend.
Yeah.
Watching football, podcasting, getting up, podcasting, watching more football. It felt pretty much like any other time. So no, except the fireworks waking me up, but that's
Mm.
about it. It was
Yeah.
otherwise pretty chill.
Yeah.
So, but Happy New Year, everyone. That doesn't mean I don't wish y'all a Happy New Year. Happy New Year.
Yeah, if 2023 was good and 2024 is coming in the same, that's a blessing more than anything. So hopefully everybody in here had a good one as well. Hopefully your football teams and the college side of things did better than my Iowa Hawkeyes, who got embarrassed. But that's okay. That quarterback for Tennessee, Scott, we're going to be talking about him 2 years from now because, man, that's some talent. David Youngkin coming in here saying, "Morning, Nick and Scott. Let's not go get a retread quarterback. Stidham is not it, but we know." But he will know the offense better than anyone next season. If we started him, then go get weapons for him. David, I don't disagree with you about potentially Stidham being the quarterback here. I think the Broncos will still look at the market, though, depending on how Stidham looks down the stretch here. And I might actually disagree with you to a certain extent that nobody would know the offense better. You do have Jameis Winston out there who spent multiple years with Sean Payton in New Orleans, so he might actually know the offense better. Now, what kind of contract are you talking about with Jameis? Is that a pathway you even want to go down? It's going to be unfortunate. A lot of people are pretty emotional about this whole Russell Wilson contract thing with the Broncos, and a lot of the names that I'm going to throw out, and I'm sure Scott as well, but these aren't, end game quarterbacks here. You're talking about kind of like maybe we can capture some lightning in the bottle and maximize a window here, but with where the Broncos are at, unless you get really, really lucky with a draft pick and something happens there, you're probably talking about a lot of less than desirables as options during these dead cap years with Wilson. So just want to get that out of the way.
Yeah, which is 2 seasons. Now, do you want to go get a day 2, day 3 quarterback also? Yes. You're going to want to draft. Is it going to be feasible to go and get Jaden Daniels, Caleb Williams, or
Drake May?
Drake May? Probably not. Been a lot of talk. We call it a little bit of recency bias. A lot of talk in the chat last night about Bo Nix. Bo Nix would be an option in the second round. There was some discussion based on, again, the recency bias yesterday. He probably won't be around when the Broncos are drafting. He probably will be around if you want to use a mid first round pick on him. He'll probably be there, though. I did see somebody from one of the major outlets put him like number 7 overall at one point. I don't think that it's gone that quarterback crazy. I actually like if I had one game in the NFL, I like Michael Penix as a thrower better. I just do. But again, his knees worry you a little bit.
And shoulder.
And shoulder injuries. The injuries worry you a little bit there. So that becomes a little scary. That's going to knock him down the board. But hey, can I use a third round pick if he's still around? And if I miss, so what? If I hit, great. Yeah, why not? You're going to have to gamble a little bit. You're going to have to get lucky a little bit. And you're going to have to coach up the guys you've got a lot.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and the reality is, unless the Broncos are trading up for one of the top 3 quarterbacks in this draft class, you're entering a 2-year window of evaluation, and we're probably pretty likely, unless, the play dictates otherwise, we're probably talking quarterback market again in 2026, just assuming what the probable results are from a day 2 quarterback. Most of the time, not the guy. But that's why we'll have games to evaluate and whatnot. The other thing, Scott, I don't know if you listened to I know you got other things going on, but actually listen to the commentary on that Broncos-Chargers game. But during the game, the announcers probably about, 32 times mentioned about the complexity of Sean Payton's playbook and the play design and getting plays in and how much he puts on the quarterback, tougher than any single coach in the NFL. Maybe that's a problem. We can talk about that. We can talk about that being a problem down the line eventually, but everything to me screams okay, they talk over and over again. If I took a shot every time they mentioned the complexity of Sean Payton's playbook, I'd have been dead by the first quarter. Do you think a rookie quarterback is going to come in week one and be able to run that? Now, we saw a dialed back version of the offense with Russell Wilson. There's no doubt that Payton can do that, but does he want to do that? I don't know. All this rookie quarterback talk, I'm like, I think a rookie, if he comes in, is more likely to sit on the bench for most of next season than play.
Some of that's it depends on who he is, of course, but some of
Yeah.
that's hyperbole also. You
Yeah.
don't go 11-2 or whatever it was with Taysom Hill, with Teddy Bridgewater filling in, with Jameis Winston the very first time he puts on a Saints helmet. If you don't know how to coach a quarterback, if you don't know how to put a guy into a system and make it work. Russell Wilson come in. His numbers were good. He might not have done everything he wanted to, but his numbers overall were pretty good this year as far as touchdowns interception ratio. So again, I listened to the Broncos. I didn't listen to I didn't listen to the National, but yada yada yada. That's kind of way I'm thinking of that one, is the complexity of this. If it's too complex, then keep it simple, stupid. And I think Sean Payton isn't stupid.
No, I do think, though, that based on what we've seen to his career to date, has he ever really gone starting to a rookie quarterback where he wasn't forced to do so? I can think of a few Ian Book starts that were extremely unfortunate to witness. That was not good. And then you also had Grayson, whoever the Colorado State guy they took, who played some, but really, he's been much more of a hunting a veteran quarterback who can come in and handle the mental side of things. Now, some of that is they never took a first-round quarterback, so
they
maybe
didn't
that'd
have
be
to.
different. And you
That's
had Breeze
part of
there.
it also.
Yes, so it's hard to evaluate. We can only go on what we've seen and what we've heard, but we're entering uncharted territory here, no doubt. Not uncharted territory. Gary Palmer coming in and supporting Broncos for breakfast. Thank you so much, Gary. We appreciate you. Always going to give a shout out to the super chats. Says, good morning, Nick and Scott. Maybe I'm overthinking this, but do you think this is a notice to Russ to get his act together or be replaced? Go Broncos. The notice has been there for a week. We are, eviction notice now. Forget about the notice that if you don't pay your rent, you're going to get evicted. We're there. This is a divorce. There's nothing that can be happen. I don't think anything could happen where this isn't a divorce.
Yeah, and like you said, it was either going to be Sean Payton or it was going to be Russell Wilson, and it's not going to be Sean Payton. So that's what it's come down to. I think this is irreconcilable differences, I think is what we might call it. Russell Wilson's just trying to get his side of the story out there to protect himself and to make sure that there's no extra fun. I'm not accusing the Broncos of funny business, but just to make sure that gets what he is guaranteed. That's why it's guaranteed. And I think this will pretty much, there will still be some yapping back and forth. We'll hear some former players, or when Russell's gone, we'll start hearing leaks and stuff. But I think as far as Russell Wilson coming out and talking publicly about this situation, I think it's done. I think that's pretty much over. And it'll be get down to business. And the business is we're going to move on from Russ, and he's going to get paid a lot of money. And how do we rebuild this team with a $40 million dead cap hit the next 2 years?
Yeah, and I still am trying to wrap my head around why people are so upset about this. I get being upset because the sunken cost and the fact that it didn't work out, and some of the numbers for Russ, especially more of the peripheral basic stats, look good. But you could see it was not getting it done this season overall. The offense wasn't very good. It's not all on Russ. Don't get it twisted. I'm not saying that. But it was not really working out. And you know what happens when there's a big contract and it's not really working out? What teams do? A lot of times they'll come up to that guy and say, listen, if you don't rework this contract, we're going to have to release you. That happened every single offseason. That'll happen from now until the new collective bargaining agreement. Maybe things change, but I know the CBA got involved in this process about coming to Russ saying, if you don't kick the injury guarantee, we'll bench you. The NFLPA, we'll find out more and more about this. Seems like it's conflicting from what I've seen out there. They put a notice saying you can't do this, but teams bench players all the time for performance/contract stuff. Oh, the expensive guy that we have here is not truly getting it done. He's not, horrible, but we have a cheaper guy we want to evaluate here. That happens every single season. I mean,
I don't know if it's almost like the threat is worse than the action.
Yeah.
It's like, well, if you don't do this, then we are going to do this, rather than just doing it.
Yeah.
I mean, Matt Ryan got benched last year. He didn't say, but I think one of the differences is when we saw that happen, I don't know, those guys were on the last year of their contracts. Matt Ryan, he wasn't, though. He had another year on his contract. So again,
Yeah.
why is the threat worse than the actual action itself? Because you cut guys all the time. I don't know. It's almost like conspiracy to commit a crime is worse than the crime itself. So
I don't get it.
we'll see. I think, again, this is a divorce that is happening this offseason. That's just about guaranteed. Almost as sure as us being able to count on Michael Ronquillo coming in and saying hello in the morning. Good morning, Michael. Says, good morning, Nick and Scott on Broncos for Breakfast. First show of 2024. Yeah, it is, isn't it, Nick? It is the first show of 2024 for Broncos for Breakfast.
Yes,
he says, go Broncos. Thank you for being here, Michael. And I appreciate you joining me yesterday on the podcast I did.
Yeah, I been busy with some stuff. So this next week might be an interesting one for me in the Kendall Del Vecchio household here. But let's say hello to some more people coming in here. Lawrence Rivera saying, "What's up, guys? It's my birthday. Happy birthday, Lawrence!" Everyone in the chat, make sure you wish Lawrence a happy birthday. It takes 2 seconds to do that. Let's show Lawrence some love here. He says, "And I can cry if I want to. Damn it! Out for the playoffs and no cash to fix things. It could always be worse. We could get Rodgers for one play. Yeah, that would have been pretty unfortunate too. I mean, let's be real. Scott, have you seen, and you always do movie references in here. Oh, Brother, Where Art Thou was probably one of my all-time favorite movies.
Hey, we're in a tight spot.
That is exactly the line where the Broncos are at right now. You're looking at the draft picks that you have. You're looking at being in the AFC West where you didn't take advantage of down seasons from a Herbert and Mahomes-led teams. And you're talking about the salary cap ramifications now moving on from Russell Wilson after aggressively paying guys last year. So you have less flexibility because of that. As you just said, Scott, damn, we're in a tight spot. Broncos next 2 years might be interesting. I think that because of Sean Payton here and whatnot, he's going to have to, I think you even said it in here, coaches bleep off to maximize what you don't have right now. But they're in a tight spot to reconfigure and build this roster outside of the guys who are already here. So I don't know. It's going to be really interesting.
Yeah, I reference that when I talk about where I live in Metro Atlanta. I'm like 20 minutes from everywhere. It's right in the middle. It's like a hub. It's like, well, in this place of geographical oddity, it's 2 weeks from everywhere. I don't want Dapper Dan. I don't want Fop. Yeah, I like that. I mean, I made a lot of money in college writing papers for people. So I wrote a lot of Odyssey papers when I was in college. I didn't get very good grades. I got grades for other people. Money was a better motivator for a guy like me. And happy birthday, Lawrence. Appreciate you joining us. And here's the thing. Couple things on Lawrence's comments. He brings up a couple good points here. No cash to fix things. That's not any different. That's the thing, is you were going to have very limited salary cap money with or without Russ. Now you just don't have Russ. So when you make this move, you ask yourself, are we better off trying to end this salary cap problem in 2 years instead of trying to make this work for 2 years and then having to cut Russ and having the salary cap for another 2 years? They decided we're better off ripping the Band-Aid off now, having financial flexibility in 2026, something we might not have had if we had kept Russ another year or 2 years, which would have happened if that injury guarantee kicks in. The other part of this about Aaron Rodgers is, well, why don't you just restructure his contract? Aaron Rodgers did. Nobody restructures contracts and gives positive terms unless you've got leverage over them. Aaron Rodgers is under contract for 2 more seasons. I'm sorry. He's on the rostered contract for 2 more seasons, 2024 and 2025. And then he's got a dead cap hit of $35 million in 2026 as a void year. So they've already planned their big dead cap number of 2026. You know what that leads me to start believing, Nick? There's a lot of people that believe there's going to be a big cap raise in 2 years, within the next 2 years. We'll take that extra money and we'll just write that off to Aaron Rodgers that we're going to get in 2026.
The issue when you start doing that is you're talking about inflation of contracts as well. So while, the dead cap hits are going to look smaller, the cost of everything else is going to go up. So while you are doing that, your proportion and your percentages of what it takes to take to sign a quarterback or a number one wide receiver or an edge rusher will be proportionate to how much the salary cap goes up. So it will be interesting to see how that plays out. And that's an avenue too. The Broncos are going to be pretty cap poor the next 2 seasons. And Scott, it might even be more complicated because of how the June 1st designation works. I don't think there's like 30 million that the Broncos won't even have totally available to them until June 1st. Now, there is a certain point where you have to get under the cap, so you can probably do some cap games in order to overcome that. But I think the money doesn't actually become available to you until that vesting date. So that is an interesting tidbit to follow. And you mentioned it. If the Broncos really do want to sign some guys, they can, and they can push those salary cap dead hits to 2026 and even add some void years afterwards. I think the first time I ever saw void years added to a contract was the Saints with Taysom Hill. They did some void year stuff. I'm like, oh, well, this is cap's already very confusing and whatnot. Now we got to deal with this BS, but there's potential void years coming.
I don't
Maybe
like
I'm
the
a
void
little.
years. I don't think that's.
I don't think it's a good strategy.
It's not even a good strategy. I think it's defeats the purpose of the cap.
Yeah.
The void years is like, no, we're just going to go ahead and admit to taking this cap hit, but we're not going to have him on the roster. That's disingenuous to what the salary cap's supposed to do.
Yeah, maybe they'll do something with the next CBA. Who knows? But it'll be interesting for sure. Good shout out to Gary Palmer for the birthday. Shout out to Lawrence Rivera. Thanks for the super chat. We also got Todd coming in saying Jarrett Stidham looked rusty to me. Anyone else? Yeah, he looked a little bit clunky out there, in my opinion. He overall had his basic statistics, Scott, were pretty much the same as Russell Wilson in the game against the Chargers, but it's a 1-game sample size. Anything can happen. I'm not taking too much into that. The EPA difference was much bigger for Stidham too, mainly because he was not taking the same amount of sacks. And I think Russell Wilson also had a turnover in that game at Los Angeles, but you had Wilson's EPA per dropback in that Chargers 24-7 Broncos win over the Chargers at negative 0.7 EPA per play, where Stidham came in at 0.14, so much better. I think in the about the 60th percentile compared to Wilson, who was in like the 15th. Comes down to turnovers. That was the big one.
I kind of joke about this one in my head when I saw this from Todd. Stidham looked rusty to me. Anyone else? How would you know? How would you know he looked rusty? The man hasn't been a starter since he was in college. He hasn't been a starter since 2019 at Auburn. How could you even tell if he looked rusty? So all that considered, I thought he looked pretty good. Can his timing get better? Yes, of course he was going to be rusty.
Yeah.
But how much better can he get? We don't really know. Really know. He's never played in the NFL other than 2 fill-in games, which don't mean anything, right, Josh Dobbs? Where you could catch fire. So did he look good enough where I wouldn't be panicked if he's the starter next year? Yeah, I'd feel okay. I wouldn't feel like, hey, this is a Super Bowl contending team, but can you survive the cap hit and play competitive football and maybe eke out a AFC wildcard spot? Or if the Chiefs continue to go backwards, win the division at 10-7? Yeah, I think you could probably do that. And so again, with the no cash thing, you weren't going to have much cash anyway. There was going to be a lot of restructuring of contracts being done this offseason. Also, Gabe coming in, he says, Russell's woe is me pity party PR campaign is whack. Support the Broncos, not an 11-19 quarterback who's already getting $124 million. I'd like someone to actually add up all of this money by the time it is done, because he got paid on his current contract, and then he signed a 5-year, $160 million extension, guaranteed. He's going to get at least $160 million. That's guaranteed. Plus whatever you paid him in his first year that didn't count towards those guarantees, unless every single penny did. But he's getting $160 million at least. That's a promise.
Yeah, he's getting, I think it might be 124 because I think some of that guaranteed language was that salary one that they're avoiding, which lops off 37 of it. But it's complicated. I don't know. I'd have to look because I know he did sign for that guarantee, but I don't know if it actually comes out to that in the end with the moves that they've made. So all I know is, I mean, if you want to, there are Russell fans, there are Bronco fans, there are people. I mean, it's in the middle. It's an unfortunate thing. the simple reality is if Russell was playing better, we wouldn't be in this situation.
Yeah, and
Now,
that's what it goes down to is, are you worth what you're getting paid? If the answer is yes, you are safe. If the answer is no, you are not. You have the
mhm,
leverage. If you are worth more than you are being paid, you have the leverage.
yep.
Would, we take a look at the salary cap. Had somebody accuse us of just paying too much attention to Russell Wilson's money. You don't seem to care about anybody else's money. Really? Let's look at Garrett Bowles. Is Garrett Bowles worth a $20 million cap hit in 2024? Probably not.
I
So,
think his level of play probably is, but more so on a contender than a team that is probably waffling a bit next season. I mean, he's been playing top 12, top 15 left tackle this season. And I think tackles are get that kind of money. I mean, I think what is he like the third highest graded left tackle per PFF, or he's way up there this year. He hasn't given up a lot of pressures. I mean, we can verify that, but I don't
yeah,
think
I'll
he's
look it up
been.
while you're monologuing real quick, because I've got
But
an eyebrow raise on that.
I think he's been pretty good this season overall. The main issues I have with Garrett Bowles are more so the run blocking at this point in his career. He can't really drive guys, but I think somebody would be happy to take that on for him from a contender, especially if you have a rookie contract and are looking at a tackle. The one thing the Broncos have going against them this season is that this is an absolutely freaking loaded tackle class. So maybe teams are not going to be as what's the word I'm looking for? Desperate to trade away picks to bring in a Garrett Bowles, but Bowles has been pretty good this season. I don't think it's arguable to say he's a top half starting tackle in the NFL and maybe even a top quarter.
Well, it'd be quarter if you said it was 15th. Bowles is 15th on PFF, and even top 20 tackles right now. I go down to 19, and Garrett Bowles is smiling at me on his average salary at 17 million.
Mhm.
So 19, 15, that's about right.
Yeah,
But I think you still have, in that case, I either have leverage against him and say, listen, I'm not paying you $18 million, take a pay cut, or I want to keep him. And
it's
if
an
I want to
extension.
keep him for 3 more years, then I can do an extension. I can do a restructure. But I have to have one of those two things in order to really be able to pull off an extension or a restructure. I can't say, I don't want you, give me back money. That's not going to work very well.
Yeah, when you see that happen, typically you'll see guys put bonuses in their contract, but you only really see that for guys competing for they're all competing for Super Bowls, but teams that are really know they're in a Super Bowl window and with older guys who are trying to win it and the example that I think of is Peyton Manning. They worked that deal down a bunch and they put in a bunch of guarantees that he only would have gotten or bonuses that he only would have gotten if they won the Super Bowl. Well, guess what? He got every penny back because they ended up winning the Super Bowl in 2015. So that's it's a tough one. We got Joey LaGuardia coming in here saying, how many draft picks could you get for Patrick Surtain realistically? I think you need to probably get a top 10 pick and a future first in order to trade Surtain, given he's 23, 24 years old, one of the top cornerbacks in football at a value position as well. So also not a great cornerback class this upcoming year. Surtain was a better prospect coming out than any single guy coming out this season. So I'm thinking you need a top 10 pick plus another future one for me to be interested in Surtain, or he needs to be part of a deal that, let's say you trade what the Broncos have right now, 14 plus Surtain gets you up to pick number 3 and you take quarterback you love. That's a conversation as well. I don't know if I'm wanting to do that. I think that it's a pretty bad precedent to trade, foundational pieces as well when you are not, a quarterback away from really jump starting things. But you don't even start until you have the quarterback too. So it's Broncos. What is it? Damn, we're in a tight spot
You're in a
with the
tight
Broncos
spot.
right now. Yeah. Yep.
But that's really your only piece of how could I get good draft picks? How could I get several high draft picks?
In
That's
return.
that's that's your only piece
Yeah.
is Surtain. And again, a corner when you've got a ton of other holes is a problem. And as you've said, you might be able to, but it'd be hard to picture getting into the top 3 without including Surtain.
Mm-hmm.
It'd be hard. Which would you rather have? Your franchise quarterback is a problem, or the possibility of a franchise quarterback, the hope of a franchise quarterback, or a for sure all pro corner? It's tough.
Yeah.
It's tough
And you
in
have
there.
about 6 to 9. I mean, there's no guarantees, but with how cornerbacks kind of fall off at age 30, typically is that once they hit 30, it's like, for a cornerback because they're so reliant on Twitch. But what do you have? Another 6, 8 years of
He's big enough
Surtain.
to move to safety or do some other things. He'll be around. He'll be around a while. He's not
And
just a pure athlete corner. He's technique. He's strong. He'll play another 10 years in this league if he stays healthy.
But I'm talking more so the all-pro window with him, where
I'm just talking value of what do you want in return to give up a 10-year, decade corner that's going to make 7 or 8 all Pro Bowls?
Yep. It's a tough spot. I probably do not move Surtain just because there are no sure things in the draft, and you have a sure thing here. And as you talk about it, Scott, I mean, what other pieces can the Broncos possibly trade to bring in actual value? Well, that's an indictment on where the roster is at right now, and part of that is because of the Russell Wilson trade. I mean, everything. Sorry, George Payton, but the more we look at it, the more it's like, wow, we are not in a great spot right now roster-wise, and it's because you haven't really hit on a number of things, but it's going to be tough.
What's valuable in the NFL? Talented, young, and cheap. If I hit the trifecta on those 3, I can get a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Pat Surtain hits the trifecta on those right now for one more season. Then he's going to get expensive.
Yes.
Then he's going to get real expensive, and it becomes not as valuable if you were to try and move him in that contract. Yep. Patrick, I'm just finished up my Lion coffee right now, kicking in nicely. Patrick Wilsey says, "Aloha, my coffee brothers. Bring it in. Bring on the mock drafts." Nick, that's not the first time I've seen this today.
Oh, is it
I
time?
think Thursday we're going to have to go through our first mock draft.
Yeah. I might not be here Thursday.
That's true. Maybe I'll be here Thursday and I'll run through. I'm not expecting to see Nick on a Thursday. I don't want to do a mock draft without you.
Okay.
We'll figure it out. So next they're on the it's on the docket. It's on the docket, Patrick. We'll get to those very soon. Thunder Snow with a really good question here. He says, besides Garrett Bowles, who are the other top restructure candidates? And as we've talked about, trying to do some of the basic math on this, let's say I owe Garrett Bowles $20 million in 2024, $20 million. I can say, I will pay you that in the form of a signing bonus. I'm going to give you $20 million cash right now, and I want you to sign this 5-year contract. That takes that $20 million cap hit that he would have had in 2024 and takes it down to $4 million each year for the next 5 years. So he now has a $4 million cap hit plus whatever salary I give him in 2024, which would be about $1.5 million. So I can take that $20 million cap hit and knock it down to $5 million cap hit with a contract extension. And I can do that because I've got owners that would be willing to shell out the cash to give out these big signing bonuses. So that being said, how did I get it down from 20 to 5? I just saved $15 million on my 24 cap. Who are some of the other guys we're looking at that we could do that with, Nick?
Pretty much anybody who's a veteran that is worth keeping around that was not just signed last offseason. So you're talking about Garrett Bowles, Justin Simmons, and Cortland Sutton. Those are really the only ones that make sense in terms of a restructure. You could approach Jerry Jeudy with a new contract and lower that, $12-15 million cap hit in 2024. But I think you're probably more so likely to move on from Jeudy than give him an extension that would lower that cap hit. Other than that, though, Scott, I mean, those are the big 3. It's Cortland Sutton, Justin Simmons, and Garrett Bowles. I think given what we've seen from the free agents signed last offseason, the big 3 in Powers, McGlinchey, and Allen, you could also theoretically, I think Allen is probably the only one I would be in this category, but you could probably restructure that one a little bit as well and up the guarantees down the line, because I think he's played well enough where I'm okay further committing to him. I don't know if I would do that with Powers and lose the flexibility to move on from him. I know it's sure as bleep. I'm not doing that with what we've seen from McGlinchey this season. Right. So maybe Allen as well. But those are the big 3 plus throw in there.
Yeah. And then, so let's just go through some math real quick. A $20 million cap hit on Garrett Bowles. If I could take it to 5, I save $15 million. If I do that with Justin Simmons and I take 18 and take it to 5, I save 13 million. I'm at 28 million already. I move on from Tim Patrick completely. He's got 16 versus 6, so that's a $10 million saving. Where am I at? $38 million. DJ Jones is in trouble right now. There's another $10 million. I'm at $48 million right now. Unfortunately, that gets you about to neutral where the cap is, because you're overextended right now. So there's going to be some financial stuff, but there is going to be more money than you think, because like I said, you were going to take the cap hit no matter what on Russell Wilson, whether it just mattered, were you going to pay him to be playing for somewhere else or sitting out and drinking, Mai Tais. But there's several guys on there, and basically Thunder Snow over on Twix. Good to see you. That coming in. It was a lot of the guys we were talking about fire sailing after the Jets loss before the trade deadline. So Rattlesnake Master says, can we get a mock draft today? Love from Nebraska. I think if you ask nicely like that, Nick will probably throw something up there for you.
Yeah, we could probably do something. It'd probably be only the thing is Broncos only have 2 picks in the top 100 right now, because you traded up for Riley Moss last year, gave up that one of your 3rd round picks, and one of your seconds is gone in that Sean Payton trade. So you don't really have a lot of maneuverability in the draft. I mean, most of your improvement from this season, next season, is going to have to come from within the house, or you're going to have some unbelievable jobs by the pro scouting department, finding some, has-beens, guys who haven't really fit in other spots, that come in and be like, oh, wow, look at him in this system. This is why he was a former 3rd round pick. It just never really worked at Team X. Now he's over here at Team Y. So, I mean, Broncos are in a tough spot, folks. It's just going to be what it is. And hopefully by 2026, we can see the end of it. But this might be a team that this might be a team that really is set up for the rebuild and the hard rebuild. The issue is, Scott, you have an older head coach who is all about, winning the here and the now.
I know.
And with that perspective, it doesn't really line up.
You're going to go 3 years of mediocrity in order to take a shot in year 4?
Does Payton have that long? I mean, I don't know, man. It's going to be really interesting. I'm not here going to blow, rainbows and unicorns up your you-know-what. I mean, the Broncos are in a really weird spot going forward because of where the roster is at, combined with the limited cap space with Sean Payton. It was one of the reasons that I was concerned about some of the, older coaches last cycle. This is a long-term building project here. So we'll see. We have Ty Y coming in talking about PS2. He also says, I see them moving on from Judy, Jones, Jewell, Tim Patrick, Purcell, and Patrick signed a 3-year extension 2 years ago. Hasn't been healthy since. Yeah, Patrick's gone. You didn't toss in DJ Jones. That one is
I did.
obvious.
I did. There's 10 million there if you decide to, which is sneaky. I didn't even consider him at the beginning of the year, but he's played his way into being a cut candidate. And this is Tyler. I figured this out as I was going through some stuff on the back end. So Tyler Wychunas. So that's who Ty Y is. It's got to be. That's the only thing that makes sense to me. So good to see you, Tyler. He's been around, changing his name a little bit. But yeah, to go on these, Judy's contract is guaranteed. So to move on from him, you got to find a taker. That's not as easy as just, hey, we're going to cut you. Jones that's $10 million of savings if you cut him. So you might be able to find a taker and you pick up some money and you buy a draft pick back. Tim Patrick is he's got a $16 million cap hit next year and a $6 million dead cap hit. He's toast. That's $10 million in savings. Purcell is a free agent. Josie Jewell is a free agent. So those guys are they don't count on next year's cap right now. Do you want to bring them back? Can you bring them back? What are your other options going to be? They're not cheap for what you get from them. They're not cheap.
Yep. And just in terms of starters being gone because of cap reasons, probably Lloyd Cushenberry ends up in that realm as well. He's been good this season. If the Broncos had a rookie contract quarterback and you could sign him to essentially a 2-year deal, maybe it's written as a 3, but it's 2 year with the way the guarantees work, I'd be for that. But I don't think that you're going to be in a position salary cap roster building wise where you can delve out those contracts, where you're going to be, well, it's kind of funny with the Walmart money here and the Broncos' rich ownership, but in terms of constructing the roster within the confines of the collective bargaining agreement, we're going to be couch cushion looking for change coming up here. So your options, I mean, it's possible, Scott, we're talking about Bulls a lot. Maybe the Broncos move on from Bulls. They trade him for I don't know, second round pick, something like that. Maybe you send a fifth back with him. Don't know if I'd trade him unless I could get a second back. But maybe you're talking about starting Alex Palshetsky next season at left tackle. Maybe you're talking about Forsyth / Wattenberg at center. Obvious steps back talent wise, but it might be a kind of a plug your nose. We're trying to get through this cap hit so we have some flexibility. And then 2025, while we'll still have 45 million, right? Is that about what it is for Russell Wilson dead cap in 2025? You can start setting up contracts where the dead cap hits come 2026 and beyond. So this year it's going to be tougher than 2025, where the contracts are easier to set up, where you can get around that 45 million dead.
Two comments I want to get on this one real quick.
Okay.
From James coming in, he says, funny how we started the year clean house, fire sale midway. Hey, we good now. End of the year, fire sale again. What a year. Then following that with Colin Wood saying restructuring is just kicking the can down the road. In the cases that we're talking about, no, it's not. These are guys that have 1 year left. You can call it an extension, you can call it a restructure. So in your case, Colin, if you mean restructure a guy who has a long-term deal like Zach Allen,
yes,
restructuring him would be just pushing money down the road. Restructuring the current 1 year deal left on Courtland Sutton, Justin Simmons, and Garrett Bowles is an extension for guys that you want to keep anyway. So that's not adversely affecting your future salary cap, assuming that those guys can play, because you want to keep them. You want to keep them, and you've only got 1 year left on their deals anyway. So you can get some short-term gain and some long-term security for players that you want to keep, at least for a couple more years. They are getting older. So restructuring isn't always a credit card move. This can be a way to lock up guys that you want to keep and get some immediate cap relief on those. So, and getting back to what James was saying on this is, end of the year fire sale again. James, no, it's not. A lot of the guys that we were talking about the fire sale, we're not talking about trading anymore. We're talking about restructuring / extending their contracts because you think they're good enough to keep building with in the future. Garrett Bowles, in October after that Jets loss, I was ready to trade Bowles, Simmons, Sutton, Judy, you name it, all of them. They all got to go at 1-4 after that loss to the Jets game. Get what you can, burn it down, and restart. Now it's just a matter of who are free agents do you want to try and bring back. The guys that are pretty much under contract for the most part are guys you want to extend. So other than Russell Wilson.
The one thing I keep telling myself with this, and maybe it's a little bit morbid or existential, but let's say the Broncos do have some, down years coming up cap-wise and building. It was always going to be hard anyway, right? With Patrick Mahomes in the division. So we're getting some bad organizational years out of the way when you be pushing the rock up the hill anyway. So that's maybe the morbid way to look at it. We probably would have been screwed anyway with Mahomes in the division. So who knows? That's why we'll play the games. We'll see what happens. We have Ty Y coming back in saying we have a few players that can be restructured. I think the Broncos will be fine. Where there is a will, there's a way, and it's not a fire sale at all. I don't think it's a fire sale, but it might be a aggressive push to move on from some guys just to create your cap flexibility and add assets. And Scott, we've been talking about the big ticket guys, but I mean, I think even looking at the way the roster is set up right now, maybe you're looking to trade guys who are rookie contracts that have just 1 year of control left. So that way you can bring in a rookie to replace them. That's 4 years of control. So you're looking at your Cooper versus Browning. Both of those guys are free agents at the end of the year. It might be smart to trade one off and get a 4th round pick back and reset that contract rather than having to have both those guys hit the market at the same time. Now you're always going to weigh that against the compensatory pick kind of stuff there if you want to play that game during the lean cap years, but that's a interesting position to look at. Maybe you want to reset with, get what you can for Javonte Williams. It's tough with him. I don't think you're going to get much value at all. Maybe probably more valuable just holding on to him, but I do think about that edge spot as well with Cooper and Browning because you do have a spot for both of them, but you're not going to be able to pay both of them for sure. So maybe you want to get ahead of that.
Yeah. And that would be, that would be a tanking type of move. Again, are you going to be able to get, what are you going to get for a guy with, what are you going to get for Jonathan Cooper?
Probably a 5th.
Okay. Am I going to be able to replace Jonathan Cooper with a 5th?
He was a 7th, so
Probably
probably
not,
not.
though. But
Probably
probably
not.
not.
Probably not. Yeah, you're
Probably
probably more
not. He's
likely to get
$1
your
million next year.
Delarrin Turner Yell. Yeah.
He's $1 million. Baron Browning, what was he, a third? Am I gonna what could I get for him? Do I think I might be able to spin him into more than a third right now? Maybe.
Maybe.
But
Yeah.
he's $1.4 million.
Yeah.
You know, you get out ahead of those guys by extending their contracts and giving them a decent signing bonus and signing them to 4 years and giving them, you know, a $10 million signing bonus. That's how you get ahead of those guys. And then their cap hit goes from 1 to 3, from 1.5 to 4.5. I don't know how much you're getting for that year until you can get back the flexibility in 2026. I think they're so cheap. They're good players. They so far outplay their salary that I think those are guys you have to have next year.
Unless you're just replacing them with your Thomas Incoom and whatnot. It's I know
such a downgrade though.
I agree. Yep. And I think that's what you're looking at, Scott. I mean, I don't think next season's not a year to put everything on the credit card and go for it. You do not have foundational pieces. So what sets you best up to be a renaissance team in 2026?
Good players that cost $1 million.
But they won't
I'm
be
not
here.
giving them up.
They won't be here for that though. At that point, you're
in 2025. Then I'm 1 year closer to getting better, and I can extend them and have a really small cap hit in 2025.
Yeah,
because I can sign them to a multi-year deal, just like we're talking about restructuring.
Yeah,
and if Baron Browning becomes so damn valuable, then I franchise him.
Yeah,
or I make this decision in October.
Yeah. And this is one reason, too, that I'm looking at a team like this with the Broncos, and it's sets up where you need foundational pieces. Maybe you take an edge rusher a year before it's an issue, and that does free you up to, use an early asset on the position. But, I mean, that's really the long and short of it at the end of the day, Scott. The Broncos, I mean, how many truly foundational pieces do they have right now on the roster? Especially the under 27-year-old kind of guys. Those are the foundational pieces. Once you reach 30, like, you're good, but your window is so short. You got minors on offense. That might be it in terms of the young building block kind of guys. On defense. Surtain, Allen as well. I'll toss Allen in there. You have questioned maybe Browning could be that guy, but you just do not have those foundational pieces. And I think it was Daniel Jeremiah kind of talked about, like, you need 2 guys in the offensive line, 2 weapons, the quarterback, 2 guys in the defensive line, and then 2 guys in the defensive back 7. You are a ways away all the way around. That's one reason I keep coming back around also. Like, quarterback can fix a lot for the Broncos, but you just have so few foundational pieces that are even going to be able to maximize that rookie contract with them. I don't know. It's a hard spot.
Yeah, and we can get back to this is why you don't trade up last year. When you really have to have who can be foundational pieces. Okay, well, I need Mims to step up. I need Riley Moss to step up. I need Drew Sanders to step up. Those guys were expensive, relatively speaking. They weren't first round picks, but they were. You put some decent resources into those guys. They need to step up. Year 1 to year 2, we've seen some growth. Benito comes back. We saw him, he went from year 1 to year 2. And I expect to see those guys take a big leap from year 1 to year 2. And how much would that help? How much would that help to get Riley Moss that you expect out there in place of Fabian Moreau? I can get Caden Stearns and PJ Locke. I'm going into next season feeling better.
Locke's a free agent.
Locke is a free agent. I keep forgetting that. And I don't trust Caden Stearns to stay healthy, so I got to get a safety. I have to get a safety, or at least
Locke might be back, though.
Yeah, at least he's not going to cost a ton more.
No,
you might double, triple, and he's only going to be $3 million. But when I had this discussion when I was running events. I had a $80,000 budget to run events. It's like, can I get this? I'm like, no. It's only like $5. I'm like, I'm over budget right now. It's $5 I don't have. So 1 to 2 is a difference. Now, here's something to think about. Do you know how much, talking about Pat Surtain, he's got a 6 and change cap hit next year. In 2025, on his 5th-year option, it jumps to at least
16.
I had this open. It's like 16 and change.
Yeah, I would say about 16.
It's 15.9 is what it jumps to. If he makes a Pro Bowl this year, which there's a pretty good chance he's going to make a Pro Bowl, his fifth-year option jumps to 18.4. It's a $2.6 million Pro Bowl is what the Pro Bowl will cost the Denver Broncos on his fifth-year option. Start rooting for him to get snubbed.
I don't think it's going to matter because I think the Broncos are going to give him a new contract before that fifth-year option kicks in, and they'll lower that cap hit.
They'll lower the overall cap hit from
for 2025
to 7.
You're going to have to figure that out. I think with both Surtain and Miners, that's probably a very likely possibility to bring both those guys in and keep them long-term. But we'll see. Ty Y coming in saying in a draft, we go quarterback, defensive line, linebacker, cornerback, wide receiver, and or safety.
That's it.
Again, that's it. That's all you need.
No,
with
I'm
only
teasing.
2.
You got more picks this year. That helps. But again, trading up
picks?
last year kind of hurt.
Yeah. Twice. You traded up twice. You could have probably used
6 picks.
Yeah. It's definitely a rough spot. The thing is, Ty, when you talk about you need this, and this, it comes back to the main point. What do you need more than anything, Scott? Good players. Guys who can make a difference on your team. Now, obviously, at the end of the day, there's, positional value goes into it, all these different analytics and metrics that can help inform you. But what does it lead you to? Finding cost-controlled players that can hopefully be long-term pillars and building block guys. So I don't think you should be locked in at anything in the first round right now. I don't think you should be locked into the first round, period. Honestly, Scott, if I was in charge, this is, again, me very much kind of not waving the white flag, but looking at the roster and being like, uh-oh, ew, I might be looking to trade back from 14 right now, get a couple extra day 2 picks, and then just roll the dice on some trench guys, some slow development positions that are going to be much more valuable to you after they've taken their lumps 2024, 2025, and are emerging by 2026. You're talking about your defensive tackles. You're talking about your offensive tackles, not your plug and play. They're pretty good immediate positions like you're seeing today at cornerback and wide receiver. I think those are much more, if you are in your window, you can take off and go more so than your trench spots. But that's me looking at what the state of the roster is and where I see them right now.
Let's, you talk about trading down and stuff. Why don't you fire up a mock draft, or I can if you want me to, and let's see what would be available. And yes, in any mock draft you do, Michael Penix and Bo Nix are going to be available at 14. They will. So we need to look at other players that might be available too. And if you decide you want to trade down, what are you giving up in that spot? And for most people who haven't done a lot of research, which I would think is most people, you're not really going to know what this means. It's like, wait a minute, Kool-Aid McKinstry fell to 14. You can't give him up. Well, who the hell's Kool-Aid McKinstry? There's really a guy named Kool-Aid McKinstry? That's what it's going to be a lot of the times, even for people who watch us every day. You're really not going to know yet what you're giving up if you come out of that 15th position, 14th position. But I think it'll be fun. Popular demand. Let's take a look at a mock draft, because I'm with you. I'd rather have 3 day 2 picks than a 15 right now.
Yeah, I think the real question will be, do we love any of these quarterbacks enough to take a shot? And if yes, then even if you aren't really on your window, you should take a shot on a quarterback if you like the guy, if it's within reason, just because you should always be drafting quarterbacks and looking at that. But where I'm at with this roster, Scott, I think you're much more prudent to trade down, use a pick on a developmental who will be a swing tackle that can play a spot come 2025 if you're moving on from Bulls / McGlinchey, and a wide receiver or a defensive tackle too. Do these positions that, again, you're building much more for a healthy roster 2025, 2026 than immediately going for it in 2024. But does that align with Sean Payton and this team? I don't know. I mean, everything's been accelerated now that you've moved on from Russell Wilson. The onus is more so on Sean Payton. So maybe he feels like he has to go for something. I don't know. We'll see. I mean, I see Mr. Rocket saying if Sean trades up for a top 3 quarterback, people are going to be so mad. Not going to be mad, but you talk about all the eggs in one basket. You're not in a position where if that guy fails, we're on a 2-year rebuild. Now you're probably talking like 2028 by the time that you're able to get out of that, unless you hit a generational quarterback. But if you trade up for a quarterback and give up future picks and that guy flames out, you're in a world of bleep. but you might already be in that world of bleep. I don't know.
And Dan asked, will the quarterback J.J. McCarthy be available at 14? He might not be available at 1. He hasn't decided if he's coming out yet.
Yeah.
So we're J.J. McCarthy is not declared for the NFL draft, and he can make a ton of money staying at Michigan one more year. If he wins it, he should come out. I mean, if you win, come on out. But he could make $10 million at Michigan next year.
Quarterback 1 is extremely on the table for 2025. I know a lot of people are talking Shedeur Sanders. I don't see a first overall quarterback arm talent there. When I watch him, I see much more of a mid-first round kind of guy, which could prop him up. But I think quarterback 1 is very much on the table. And when you have a toolsy guy who's won as much as McCarthy, who was a highly rated recruit, he could easily be the first overall pick next year. And you're talking massive difference between the 14th overall pick and the first overall pick when it comes to guarantees. So I don't know. We'll see. I do have a mock draft simulator here up, but I think for Broncos country, if you are talking about quarterback round 1 this year, your options will be Nix, Penix, and McCarthy. We'll see if I think Ewers is going to go back, but they have so many guys leaving on that offense, Scott, that we'll see. Also, you got Arch Manning in the background. They might want to make that
Somebody's leaving Texas. Arch didn't sit in 2 years in a row.
Probably not. Probably not. So we'll see what happens with them. I don't know. I'm not ready to be all in on Penix, Nix, or McCarthy. And yeah, Carson Beck will be there next year as well. He did declare he's going back, Michael. So Carson Beck at Georgia will not be in this draft. So a lot of names, but who knows how it plays out. So I have this here. Do I need to zoom in at all, Scott?
Yes. Keep going.
We're gonna lose it soon. That's as much as I can go while still seeing who's there. So Broncos right now picking 14th overall. Unfortunately for all the people at home who are hoping for the Broncos to trade up for a quarterback, right now you have the Bears at 1, the Commanders at 2, and the Patriots at 3. Unless the Bears are trading out of that number 1 overall spot, quarterbacks are probably coming off the board 1, 2, 3.
And here's the thing about that, Nick. They could do something similar to last year. They could trade with number 2 and just switch spots with Washington or switch spots with New England. And if I'm Arizona, I might be content to do what the Colts did last year and say, okay, I can do Kyler Murray and Marvin Harrison Jr. Or if someone decides to take Marvin Harrison Jr. ahead of me, I can reset the quarterback market and I can spin Kyler Murray off in a trade. So it is going to be so hard to trade up and get a quarterback. I mean, look who's behind him and all the teams that are going to need him who could offer packages. It's one of those things, we forget. We get such blinders on with our team. It's like, well, just go get this guy. Yeah, there's 20 other teams that are looking to go get that guy too. I look at that and see Chicago. It's like, okay, well, Chicago could trade down to 3 and get get number 3, get who they want to if they decide to stick with Justin Fields, get the best receiver that's come out in a while, and Chicago is going to be so much fun. It's going to be next to impossible to go get one of the top 3 quarterbacks this year.
Unless the league's evaluation on Jaden Daniels is less than what we are thinking and hearing right now, that's a possibility. I think you can throw it out the window in terms of getting up for or having Caleb Williams and or Drake May fall outside the top 3. That's not happening. Maybe Jaden Daniels falls to that 6 to 10 range, but I don't know. I think we're entering the era of quarterback demands, and who wants to pay Kyler Murray $51 million? I don't know how the contracts trade.
It doesn't work like that. That's the thing I saw, and I saw this from other people with Russell Wilson. Guys, the team that gave him the contract is going to eat most of it. Mm-hmm. So who doesn't want to pay him $51 million and try and get some of that back is Arizona Cardinals. I saw people say that with Russell Wilson. No one's going to want to touch that contract. They won't have to. That said, his base salary is fairly high for next year. His base salary is $37 million. But then in 2025, it drops to 18. And in 2026, it's only 23. And 2027, it's only 19.5.
You talk about a restructure candidate if there's a trade.
That's what you're paying Kyler Murray.
Yeah.
Not $51 million. That's not how contracts work, y'all.
Yeah. The Broncos sitting here picking at pick 14. Scott, literally everything's on the table here. I guess, should I just run it and we can talk about how it leads into it? Obviously, a lot of people are going to want quarterback for the Broncos, but as you can see here, Caleb Williams first off the board to the Bears. You had Drake May, number 2, to the Commanders. Marvin Harrison goes 3 to the Patriots. Olu Fashanu, 4 to the Cardinals. You got Jared Verse going 5 overall. That's surprisingly high to see him, to the Giants. Jerzon Johnny Newton
Even
to the
as low as 31.
Yeah, I don't know about top 5 pick for Jared Verse, but there he is off the board. We'll see. I think it's going to be offense heavy in the top 10 this year. Jerzon Newton went 6 to the Chargers. There's your Kool-Aid McKinstry going 7 to the Titans. Brock Bowers goes 8, tight end Georgia, to the Jets. Number 9 overall, Chop Robinson, edge rusher Penn State, to the Falcons. Tez Walker, 10 overall. Okay, this is pretty random here. Tez Walker, 10 overall, to the Bears here. That won't happen. Malik Neighbors goes 11 overall to the Raiders. That's unfortunate. Jaden Daniels goes 12. If he fell to this area, maybe the Broncos are talking about trading up, but we're not doing that in this situation. So he's off the board. Vikings are a team picking above you who's probably going to be pretty interested in moving up for a quarterback too. You got Dallas Turner coming off the board there at 13. So I wouldn't say completely unfortunate for the Broncos with how this fell, but a little bit random here. And I always do like the randomness of the PFF simulator, because you don't know, right? It's like we think we know what's going to happen, and then the draft actually happened. It's like, oh my God, I never saw this coming, or this guy going this high. Randomness happens. So looking at the board right here, Scott, even though there isn't an obvious way to get this guy on the field year one, the answer is pretty easy for me. I'm taking Joe Alt in this one. You get a foundational pick on the offensive line. I think he can play left tackle or right tackle. He's only 20 years old. Yeah, I don't think Alt falls this far in the draft. To see people saying Alt won't fall this far, but in this situation, you never know. That's why the draft is
Dallas
crazy.
Turner might. Malik Neighbors might.
Yep.
If you go up a little bit more, Jaden Daniels won't. I'll bet a lot of money on that. You might be able to get Chop Robinson might be a little high. I think Brock Bowers is going to be gone by then.
Yep.
But then you go Latu. Latu would be a great pick for this team. Big, strong defensive line, edge who can seal. You need that wide receiver. I wouldn't mind going to Dunzy in that spot either. Would be a good reset at the wide receiver if you're going that spot.
Yeah, in this situation, I think Joe Alt's the obvious choice. Leatu Latu is I wish he was a little bit better of an athlete, Scott, than he is for that edge spot. He's really refined, but he has the medicals, and he's going to be a good player. I don't know if he's ever going to be great.
I kind of think of him a little bit as you run a 4-man front, and you've got Zach and him as the 2 defensive ends instead of Zach Allen and as ends, and then you're running a more 4-man front with 2 legit defensive tackles.
Man, that's a really heavy front. I don't know if you have much pass.
So now I need 220-pound 4-4 linebackers.
Yeah. Man, I would be curious on that. I think you could do that on some base down kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm. Then move them inside when you're 3rd and 8.
Yeah. Yeah. I just don't know if I see the athleticism for Latu. I think he's really developed, but he's an interesting one. I do want to talk about a few other guys here. You mentioned Odunze there. I think that in reality, this is kind of the guy you're talking about in this range for the Broncos. He could come off the board sooner, but let's say Alt is off the board. I would probably be screaming Odunze. He is considered one of the smartest players in the upcoming draft as well. He can play X, he can play slot, he can play Z. And if you're talking about a Sean Payton offense with all the the option routes as well, getting somebody like Odunze, I think would be a huge get for the offense, and get yourself a very high floor building block piece here that, even though you're not getting your quarterback here, this is somebody who your quarterback is going to be very happy to have whenever you do get that quarterback. So if it's not quarterback centric, it's setting it up for when the quarterback can be here. And I think Odunze would do that as well.
But this is a fairly deep draft at the top. There's guys you can get in the teens that you're going to be excited about.
Yep. Yeah, without a doubt. And some other names here, some guys that surprised me to fall a little bit. I'm surprised to see J.C. Latham this low, Scott. Now, Joe Alt is the obvious choice, but we've kind of talked about it a bit here. Broncos are going to be in an interesting spot to talk about the offensive tackles. And Michael Glinchey's here. I don't know if that probably would have been good to go after him.
Can you sort by quarterbacks and look at who's going to be there? Because that's a lot of people are asking about that, and do the positions. Because again, there's only 3 that are ranked as first rounders for the most part.
Yeah, and they do have Shadur Sanders and Carson Beck listed here. Those guys are not going to be in this.
Sanders isn't coming out. He's going to get $10 million to play at Colorado next year.
And Beck isn't coming out either.
Right.
Already
and
announced.
McCarthy is still up for grabs.
And Jalen Milroe is also not coming out. So the guys listed here, Bo Nix, they have ranked 25th. Penix, they have ranked 30th. And you have Bo Nix ranked, or JJ McCarthy, excuse me, ranked 52. Obviously, this is just PFF's board, so things will change a bit here. If you love one of these quarterbacks, then I don't have an issue taking the guy. You have to love them, and you're setting your clock. That'd be interesting to follow and see what happens. But I'm not ready to attach my wagon to any of these guys right now. So again, the pick here is obvious, Scott. It's Joe Alt. Let's say Joe Alt's gone, though. I think you're much more in conversation than for Odunze, talking J.C. Latham, maybe Marius Mims, another corner tackle who is just oozes talent. And then Cooper DeJean, Terrion Arnold, Nate Wiggins. So cornerback as well. Okay, I could go on for a bit about Cooper DeJean. I think he is a super versatile piece who could probably literally start any of your spots on the defensive backfield. I think his best spot is honestly the slot corner spot because he is so good against the run with his hands that he's almost like playing like a will linebacker spot. He's that good as a run defender. So he's like a 4-3 hang player. So he would be a lot of fun in that regard. I think he's going to be athletic enough to play boundary. The issue with him at Iowa is that they ask your Iowa defensive backs to play so little press that it is going to be a projection that he can do that. And also because of what's gone at Iowa with their scheme, you've had really, really good safeties and slot players come out, but boundary cornerbacks, there has not been a hit on a boundary cornerback coming out of that Iowa system for a bit. So Cooper DeJean is going to have a pathway to the field. He's going to be a plus starter no matter what. I think the guy who I see when I watch him play is, Minkah Fitzpatrick out there with the Steelers, extremely intelligent, could play cornerback, but with the intelligence and the run game prowess, maybe a little bit more value as a safety or somebody closer to the ball. But he can play any spot. He's also an unbelievable returner, ball skills. You're going to have a chance to get some defensive touchdowns with him out there. So my big issue, Scott, is that I think cornerback specifically is something you target when you are in your window because their window of viability is typically pretty small and they are pretty much year one plug and play pieces right now. The good ones are. It's not a developmental spot.
You just made the argument for trading Pat Surtain.
It might be. I mean, that's one of the reasons that you can talk about him.
I know.
In that
Again,
window.
Everybody's got a price. You would have to. You would need one of those offers where everybody in this chat would say, "Love you, Pat, but good God, we can't turn that down."
Yeah. So I mean, cornerback is on the table, and if you're going to be living in dime or nickel, having somebody who is as good in the open field tackling and run fits as DeJean essentially means that your nickel is your base now, and you are good enough in your tackling in space that you don't have to worry about that. So if the Chiefs want to go 12 personnel or 11 personnel, God bless them. We're going to have 5 defensive backs out there no matter what, because we're smart enough on the back end to do that. So DeJean would be an awesome player. I think that given the board, the way it fell here, the obvious answer is Joe Alt, and that he's going to start somewhere on the offensive line. You're just getting a building block piece to a already solid offensive line. You're going to fortify that further. So that way, no matter what happens over the next 2 to 3 years, your offensive line is still going to be a plus.
Yeah, and it gives you flexibility to move on from Mike McGlinchey's contract when he's after next year. 1 year, get your feet wet. I get the flexibility to move on. Unless he plays great, then we'll find a way to get our 3 best offensive linemen on the field somewhere, somehow.
Yeah, without a doubt. So we got the Broncos' 3rd pick now. JJ McCarthy is still listed here. I don't think he will be there. If he comes out, he's going to go early. I don't think he will fall. But we're looking really offensive line, defensive line, anything like that here for the Broncos. Wide receiver would make a lot of sense as well.
How many Byron Murphys are there? There were 2 last year at the Senior Bowl.
There's the cornerback, Byron Murphy, that I think plays for the Chiefs. Maybe he's the Cardinals. I can get those guys mixed up. But Scott, Byron Murphy last night, I don't know how late you stayed up for that. The Rose
I didn't.
No,
I watched the first
Bowl.
quarter.
Okay, yeah.
10:30. It's past my bedtime.
Byron Murphy. The obvious answer here would be McCarthy, but McCarthy's not going to be here in reality. So I'm going to pretend that he's not there in this situation. The guy for me that stands out is Byron Murphy here. Scott. I don't know how much you watched that Sugar Bowl last night, but he was a freaking monster in that game. He's a little bit more of your 3 technique body type where he's, 6'1", 305, 310, but he was a man possessed. Him and Sweat are 2 of the best defensive tackles in college football, probably 2 of the best 4. And this is what I've been talking about. The defensive line, you need investment there. You need some guys that can develop. And Murphy was really, really impressive to me last night. So I'd probably be saying Murphy here just to get somebody in the building that you can build with going forward. I'm looking at the rest of these guys. You have some wide receivers who are interesting here. This is also still quarterback spot for the Broncos. And also this is offensive tackle spot. If we hadn't just taken one, maybe you're talking about a developmental guy that might be a starter in the near future. But for the way this sets up, pretending McCarthy is gone, the one that stands out obvious to me is Byron Murphy.
Yeah, and you can use that spot that we said going in August. And you pointed it out to me. Have you looked at the defensive line? I was like, oh my God, that's a problem. So yeah, getting some 300-pounders. And I'm actually, they brought some guys in, but I'm actually surprised they didn't work harder to keep rotating big bodies in to try and find more help on that defensive line. Bring a guy in for tryouts every week until you find something. So it's got to be a priority in the offseason. I think you spent on the offensive line. Center is going to be a question mark, but the other 4 positions are pretty much locked in for next season. You can always get depth. We can talk about that all the time. But as far as going into the draft, looking for guys that can help right away, I need defensive line. I need big bodies, free agency, some cheap free agents. Go and get, $2-3 million guys. It can be done. You can improve on the defensive line for the money that you have, without a doubt.
Yeah. And quarterback obviously is the long-term priority, but Scott, I keep coming back to it. I don't think that drafting a quarterback, unless you're taking one of the top 3 guys next year, which would be hard this upcoming draft, which is going to be hard to do with where you're at. I don't know if any quarterback you take is going to see the field until the playoffs are essentially out of the picture next year. We've seen Sean Payton. He wants to run his offense. God bleep it. And I think that given how much he demands of the quarterback mentally, any first-round quarterback's probably riding the pine for the most part next season, while a veteran, whether it be Stidham, whether it be Sam Darnold, whether it be Jameis Winston, I know that everybody just threw up in their mouth. I'm sorry. But you're probably talking about a guy who is mostly riding the bench next year, and then hopefully you're setting them up to start 2025 and going forward. That's my opinion on it right now. We'll see what Sean Payton does. He's a good coach, but I think you might be following that more of that 1-year bench and then kind of get their feet wet situation. And I saw somebody mention in here, you can find a quarterback, draft him and play him. Just look at Jordan Love. Jordan Love rode the bench for 4 or 5 years before getting that chance to start. And right now it looks like it was a good move for the Packers. He looks legitimate.
But is he legitimate because he was sat, or was he legitimate because he is good and could have been at this stage 2 years ago, but you had a guy who was better?
We'll never know.
Yeah.
We'll never know.
I have a feeling that it wasn't just that he sat for that long.
No.
That he's good, is that he was a first-round pick, and he's good.
Yeah. With what we're seeing with the quarterbacks right now in the NFL, Scott, I think that the mental acumen and knowing where to go with the football is as important as it's been in 3 to 4 years, where the quarterbacks who are just, the half-field read, arm talent athletes are struggling. And you have older guys coming in like Joe Flacco, who the entire playbook's open to them. They know where to go because they've seen everything, has mattered a lot. So I think the intelligence factor and knowing what the defense is doing, I think is more important than it has been in a bit, especially with the pressure breakages that we're seeing from defenses right now.
I was gonna say more cloud coverages. You got to be able to eke your way down, take what the defense gives you right now.
Blitzing more, simulated pressures are up, and zone coverage is up, and 2 deep safety shells are up. What does that mean? You need to know where, based on the zone reading, you need to know where it goes. Teams are disguising their coverages more than ever before, and they're disguising who's coming. So the intelligence and the ability to process that is so big. It's not just, big athlete out in space, make a guy miss, half-field read, man coverage stuff. That's not really happening so much right now. And that's one reason that outside of CJ Stroud, those quarterbacks are struggling pretty mightily. The young ones are for the most part. So unless I'm mistaken, I can't really think of anybody, the young quarterbacks who are like dominating that aren't dominating in a sense of within a system that is just loaded with weapons, right? Like the young quarterbacks, the last two draft classes, who's really stepping up right now? I mean, Purdy and Stroud. That's about it.
Yeah, I mean, there weren't. The last 2 years ago was a lost class.
Horrible class.
Yeah, that was a lost class. That was
Yep.
Kenny Pickett, Desmond Ridder, Malik Willis. That was a lost class. That's an anomaly.
Yeah, you're right. You're right.
And Purdy getting to go to Kyle Shanahan. And Purdy's good. Don't get me wrong. Purdy can play.
Mm-hmm.
He makes some ballsy throws out there. He's a good quarterback. He shouldn't have fallen that far. And
No.
I'm not going to say, well, just wait till the 7th to pick a quarterback. Look at Brock Purdy. It doesn't. Good luck. Good luck.
Yeah.
Good luck doing that. You can't build a team on the exception to the rule unless that exception happens to be an exception on the positive side.
Yeah. And these young quarterbacks, who's doing well? What system are these young quarterbacks that have been great playing in?
Shanahan's.
The Shanahan, West Coast, half-field read, everything's based on pre-snap matchups versus the post-snap processing. It's not the Sean Payton offense where it's as replicable and as limited of a playbook. So again, I have a hard time imagining a rookie quarterback coming in and playing immediately with where the Broncos are picking. Now, if we were picking number 2 overall and you had a chance at Caleb Williams, Drake May, it's a different conversation for me. But with where they're at with the quarterbacks they have, maybe you start a Bo Nix or Michael Penix right away because they're already going to be 25 years old. How much better are they going to get in the league? Have you already seen that, third bump that quarterbacks typically get? Maybe that's a reason that you're more interested in a J.J. McCarthy, who's only 20 years old, 4 years younger than those other two quarterbacks, which is just wild. But I don't know. It's a tough spot. Scott, a lot of theory here. I think I just keep coming back to it. At the end of the day, I think the team lacks a lot of building block pieces in that if there's a quarterback that you love, take him. That's fine. You're not in a window where you need to be desperate for a quarterback because I think it's going to be pretty difficult to dig your way out of that with a dead.
It'd be hard to stomach giving up a bunch of picks for a quarterback right now. You need to take a shot and get lucky on day 2, day 3. Draft a guy. Maybe you hit, maybe you don't. If you don't, do it again. Do it again in 2025.
And that's the final point I wanted to make here, Scott. Let's say the Broncos end up taking Nix or Penix at 14 overall, and because you have to get young, cost-controlled quarterback, you want to take a shot there. Maybe that's enough of an investment, unless you're picking in the top 5 in 2025, that you are not resetting the quarterback stuff. But if you are meandering and not very good, 2 years down the road, and you just have a chance to get a quarterback again, even though you just took a Nix or a Penix 2 years prior, I don't give a damn. You should be back in the quarterback market looking for another guy. You don't want to waste years because you just took an investment earlier on a guy. It's kind of we're kind of seeing it with Russell Wilson right now, right? It's a sunk cost. Well, what is it right now? You've already spent that, not getting it done. We're back in the market. So just because you
throwing good money after bad.
Yep, exactly. So just because you take a quarterback round 1 this year, folks, doesn't mean that you're not going to be looking in the very soon future again, because you need to keep hunting.
So let's get us out of here, Nick.
Yeah, absolutely. Appreciate everyone coming in. This might be the last show for a little bit for me with the guy coming in here pretty soon. So we'll see. Maybe next time you see me, I will be a father. But appreciate everyone coming in. It's happy New Year to you. Happy 2024.
I'm not calling you daddy.
They already do. Whoever that draft daddy. But appreciate everybody coming in. 2024. Hope it's a good year for everybody. Make sure you're following Scott and I on Twitter. Scott is at Scout Kennedy. I'm at Nick Kendell MHH. Also, make sure you're following us at Mile High Huddle. If you haven't done so yet, join us at facebook.com/Mile High Huddle and facebook.com/Mile High Huddle pod. And as that ticker says here underneath, please subscribe to Mile High Huddle, like this show, and share on social media platforms. We did start to get into the nitty gritty with all the draft stuff coming in here. So it's starting to be that time of year, Scott. That was our first mock of the season, maybe a little bit too random there with Joe Alt falling to the Broncos at 14 overall, considering he's probably, I would be shocked if he's picked any later than the 7th overall selection. But we'll see. It's draft season. The Broncos have a lot of avenues.
We're surprised every year come April.
Yep. Yep, we are. So we'll have a lot of chances to talk about hypothetics, and we'll see where the Broncos end up picking. I think they can pick anywhere from pick 11 to pick 16, depending on the results this upcoming week. Don't quote me on that one, though. So we'll find out what happens here. Appreciate it, everyone. Shout out to all the super chats that came in. Obviously, Gary Palmer, Michael Ronquillo, Lawrence Rivera. Happy birthday, Lawrence. Rattlesnake Master, and Taiwai coming in multiple times here down the stretch. We really appreciate you guys. Any final thoughts, Scott, as we wrap it up?
No, that should be it. And again, next time you see Nick, unless you want to join us tomorrow, I think you're here tomorrow morning, Nick, to talk. We'll do Falcons again. You want to see another show? Come join us on the Falcons tomorrow. You want to talk about some other fans that are really unhappy. And we'll be talking quarterbacks again because they're in the same boat. So come join us, youtube.com/Scott Kennedy. We'll see you tomorrow.
Yeah, I appreciate it. And that's just real quick. I know you got to get out of here, but talk about a difference in terms of a team going aggressive for quarterback. You have the Falcons with a lot of salary cap space, a very young roster that's built up on the offensive side of the ball with extra top 100 picks this year. That's a team that is, if you can go up and get a quarterback that you love in the top 3, now's the time to strike. But the Broncos, very, very different situation right now from the being that quarterback away view. So
yeah, and Kyle says Falcons are a quarterback away. They have a good Scott. And we've talked about my preferences, what I would do on that team. And again, we talk about, and then we'll get going for real. We're almost in 80 minutes this time. We talk about, I don't want that guy. I don't want that guy. He sucks. He sucks. Guys, what's available to you? You know, you don't just have your pick of whoever the hell you want to. You don't just go get to draft any quarterback you want. Does this guy make you better? If yes, then you need to discuss the options. What would it cost? We do a lot of that tomorrow for sure.
Yeah, we're going to have a good time with that. It's going to be pretty interesting to see how it plays out for sure. And maybe we'll be still covering a Russell Wilson led team next year, Scott. Who knows? But
and there's a lot in here, Russell to Atlanta. It's not out of the question.
Yeah.
And that's where and Kong, I didn't mean to take this out on you. I got a lot of this from Falcons fans. We couldn't afford Russ. No one wants that salary cap. Y'all, Russell, the only salary cap that Russell Wilson is going to adversely affect in 2024 is the Denver Broncos. He's going to be pennies on the dollar. So sign Russell Wilson for $1.5 million and draft a quarterback? Yeah, I'd be for that. Absolutely.
Yeah. Not a bad way to go if you're that team. But appreciate everybody. We're going to get on out of here. Got things to do. Got a busy day. Appreciate everyone. Have a good one. Choose kindness, compassion, and as always, go Broncos.